Hi, so if I'm going to be quite honest, it's definitely the 4th of July right now, and I simply am just now starting my TBR for Summerween. So I'm pretty much trying to speed read my way through it. I started with the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and it's so good so far. I'm only a couple chapters in, but I love all of the women who are involved in this book club. They're all so funny. I love how even in the few chapters we've had so far, you see that they're genuinely becoming friends and supporting one another. So I definitely think that that's going to be interesting. I know that the main character, Patricia, I believe she's the one who thinks that the neighbor across the street is a vampire. So I'm going to find that really interesting because out of all the women, she's the one who more specifically has been this over time pretty much became a sisterhood for her. The book club gave her life outside of being a mother, and I am kind of worried about that because I know that the women aren't going to believe her, and that's a really big point of contention in the book. So I'm kind of anxious to see how that works out because she's going to go to her friends that she's become so close to, and they're not going to believe her. Interesting. We'll see how it goes. Fun so far. Hello, what is up? So I have started reading the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I'm really enjoying it so far. Honestly, I'm only a couple of chapters in, and I feel like there's a genuine sisterhood between all the women who are participating in this book club. I think that the way that they're all depicted really shows their personalities. Within a couple of chapters, I've grown to really appreciate and enjoy all of the women's personalities individually, but also how they interact with one another. You see that everybody brings their own kind of flavor to the table, and it's really sweet to see. So far, Patricia in specific, because she seems to be our main character, has been talking a lot about how this book club, although it's not traditional, has really given her a lot of life outside of just being a wife and mother, which is what she was dealing with before. And now she feels like she's a friend, she feels like she's a community member, she feels like she's her own person. So that's been really great for her. I'm kind of worried to see how things develop in terms of the whole vampire plot, just because she seems to be the one who's the most affected and most supported by the women. So if she's the one who comes forward and says that she thinks that the neighbor is a vampire, that might cause some contention between the group, just because she really genuinely sees them as friends and sisters almost. So to not have their support in this really specific time where she might be scared, where she's trying to protect her family, that's going to be really interesting and kind of sad because I really enjoy all of them together. There's a moment in the beginning of the book where basically Patricia's bogged down by all the stuff that she has going on, being a wife, being a mom. Her mother-in-law is currently living in her home, and it's just really difficult on her. And one of the women, Grace, invites her out, and she's unable to go, and Grace hears all the issues that she's dealing with, casually is okay, sorry, you can't make it. She leaves, and then the following day, one of the women from the group shows up, and she has a bunch of supplies for the mother-in-law. And then almost immediately after, somebody shows up and she's Grace sent me, I'm here pretty much to help take care of your mother-in-law. And it was just such a sweet, simple moment to hear how your friend's struggling and tell the group so the group can be there for her. So really enjoying it. Also, I just think all the women are so funny, especially Kitty. She's such a strong personality, but she is absolutely hilarious. She's definitely irking everybody's little quirks and everything, but she's so supportive. She has been so amazing in terms of just being there for everyone and making sure that everybody, herself included, has something to do outside of just being a mom. So loving it, enjoying even hearing about the books they're reading, so really great so far. That's my update on that. I'm reading this first just because it's the longest book that I have for this readathon, I'm pretty sure. We'll see how it goes. I'll check in later. Okay, hey, so I'm back. I did finish the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Honestly, I'm not even capable of speaking about it right now because it still feels like very overwhelming. Some things happened at the end of the book that I'm not sure I agree with, but I definitely am sitting on it because I think that I really actually enjoyed this book. It might be a 5-star, but I'm not sure, so I want to like really sit with it for a bit. However, I did start Home Before Dark. I'm 127 pages in right now, and I'm really enjoying it. Basically, we're following Maggie, I believe her name is. I forget everything immediately. Yes, we're following Maggie Holt. So her father recently passed away. She works, I think, in like property development or something, but like a lot of construction work and stuff like that. So she ends up going to hear her dad's like will reading and finds out all this money that her father left her that he made off of the book House of Horrors, and she basically has all the money that he made off of it because her mother wanted absolutely no involvement, and she finds out while she's like receiving this like money that her father also still owns the property, which she thought he sold 25 years ago. So now she's kind of shocked. She ends up going there, finds out that her father had been visiting there every year on the same day, the day that they like fled originally. I think it was like July 14th. And while she's there, she's basically seeing like little artifacts of her past life throughout the house, like photographs, clothing of hers that they have left behind, and are things that she's only really remembered through the novel that her father wrote and hasn't remembered herself. She's been talking about how she's had night terrors her entire life, and Maggie has also been discussing how she has felt isolated for so long because of the consequences of her father's book that he released, but she hasn't really believed her parents. So now that her father has died and has really taken this like secret with him, and he like told her she can't return under like any circumstances, is not safe for her, she finally tries to have the discussion again with her mother, who is gung-ho about like never talking about this place again, never talking about the book. She wants it completely out of her life. And her mother basically is like, it was all a lie, a couple of things were true, and she wants to believe that because she believes that it's fake because she doesn't have any like memories about it. But at the same time, she knows her mother and knows her mother well enough that she knows that something is not being said. So she ends up going in person, and things are like slowly happening. In terms of like the pace, I definitely think this pace is like slower than the last book I read. When I was reading the Southern Book Club's Guide, things were happening constantly throughout the book. Meanwhile, things are pretty much like creeping up on you in Home Before Dark. Things are starting to feel a little eerie. We have some stories of the past in her father's perspective that are chapters of House of Horrors. So it kind of is almost like diary entries from the past, and you see how things in a very similar way started to creep up on the family until things got out of hand 20 days in. So I'm excited to see how this goes. She's only been there for a day or two, so we'll see. I definitely can't tell if I'm adoring it yet. I don't think I'm like really invested or deeply into it, which is weird because I'm 127 pages in, but I'm hoping I enjoy it. I'm still reading it. I have some work to do, so I'm going to try to get that done, and then I'm going to read this some more. So I'll check in with you guys probably tonight. There's that. Okay, so I'm going to finish off my vlog. So I read the rest of Home Before Dark. I actually ended up giving it 4 stars. I feel like I really, really enjoyed this book. it actually took me off guard. I do like Riley Sager's work, but I don't think I've enjoyed like any of Riley Sager's books as much as this one since Final Girls. I know people are like really hit and miss when it comes to like Final Girls and Riley Sager's work in general, but this one just really worked for me. I have read some books that are kind of similar in this like, is the house paranormal or is this like a true crime situation before, and I've enjoyed them way less than how I enjoyed this. There's definitely like an element where things are so spooky that they feel like they're manifesting, and then at the end of it, the twist really worked for me personally. I love anything that kind of talks about like the human experience or this like drive to protect each other, especially in terms of like family dynamics, friendships, things like that. And you see how throughout this entire thing, the main character, I think Maggie, is trying to protect herself and like her image. She's trying to protect like her memories and like her view. She feels like her parents have gaslighted her entire life. Her parents are trying to get her to kind of like forget what happened and like to get over it because they want to have her move on and they want to move on themselves. And then there were a lot of things that happened within the house that just were not only traumatic for Maggie's family, like the Holt family, but also like the families that lived in the house prior. Definitely at the base of this is just tragedy after tragedy that ended up happening at the same home. But a lot of it was like really interesting. And because so much happened in the home, there's definitely moments where I was continuously trying to figure out what was happening, and I actually was taken off guard. It wasn't like super surprising or anything, but it was nice that by the time I got to the end of the book, I actually didn't know who it was. So that was really interesting as well. There's a lot of like almost subplots that are happening in this book, so there are a lot of things to keep your eyes on, and you don't really know how things fit together, so that kept it really interesting. And I genuinely enjoyed this book, especially in terms of like a haunted house story. Also, I finally think I have like figured out what I'm doing with the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I really enjoyed this book, but there's a moment of like sexual assault that is just like so graphic and so detailed and both like very creepy because they're dealing with like this guy who's like a vampire, and also just like very disgusting, like not only on like a humanity level but also because there's like this almost like paranormal feature going on to it, and it like really disgusted me. And then soon after there's like a moment where it like really like toes the line on pedophilia, so that made me super uncomfortable. And the scenes were like back to back almost, so that kind of destroyed the book for me because I genuinely thought I was going to give this book a 5 stars. It just simply very much so worked for me. I thought like the commentary about how we don't believe women, we don't believe what we don't want to believe, we tend to not believe people of color, especially like in the time period that this book happened. It was so easy for like the white men in the book to believe that all the women around them were just being silly or dramatic or gossipy or hysterical. Even when things were so serious and so in their face, they just were never going to come to terms with what was going on, and they often like ended up giving up their own humanity, their own beliefs, in order to conform to what was cool, what was in, and what they could get away with. So this dude who's like a vampire character who's already like causing so much harm in the community, is targeting like the people of color, especially the children of color, for like this town, neighborhood, state, whatever. It is so difficult to read because you see how these men who like aren't great fathers, aren't great husbands per se, but they're pretty decent people, but how quick it was for them to change the script just because they were able to garner some power or money or get away with things that they weren't able to get away with before. and they end up losing a lot because of it. The town ends up losing a lot, and their like families end up losing a lot as well. So that was hard. There's also a moment in here where one of the characters tries to take their life, so you will be dealing with kind of suicidal ideation before that, and then a suicide attempt. So that's also present in this book. But like I said, I ultimately really enjoyed it. 4.5 stars. Honestly, I have never read a book that I wanted to finish quicker just because I was so excited. These books all ended up really working for me. Then last night, and a little bit early in this morning, I read Ace of Spades. Oh my god, 5 stars. Let's just start there. It was amazing. Just like the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, it deals heavily with race. This is pitched as Gossip Girl meets Get Out, and it is spot on. I love that show. I love that movie. Like, I own that movie on DVD. Love it so much. And the elements from both of those like media forms is definitely seen in this. I'm trying to like not get the glare, but it really just works so well throughout the entire novel. We have a character outing in here. There's definitely a car accident. Tons of gaslighting is present in this book as well. But the characters are just developed as like such a great people. They're both like dealing with this like queer identity, but in a way that doesn't take up the story. Like, the story isn't about them being queer, it's about everything else they're overcoming, and that's amazing. I really love like some of the background that we get, like her situation with her parents. She's multiracial, like her father is Italian and her mother is Nigerian, I believe. And she talks about like her culture and how she's been forced to kind of like acclimate in order to fit in and to gain power within her school, especially over like the last couple of years. And then we also see how, even though her like parents love each other, her father hasn't really stepped up for her mom and her, and the racism that they have had to experience through his side of the family. So that was really interesting. We also get to see so much about like Devon and like what he's going through in his life, the poverty he has to deal with. He has a lot of issues of like drugs in his community, mass incarceration, parent like loss and like death and things like that. And that's like rampant in his community and his like story, but it's done so well. I can't say anything bad about this book. Even when you see like things kind of coming because of how like eerie and creepy and like you grow to not trust anybody. So when things tend to happen, you're like, yeah, of course, because I wouldn't trust that person either. But it's done in a way where you really feel like trapped almost. You feel like boxed in. You feel like hopeless in a lot of occasions. And it just was so well done. It set a standard. It was amazing. Honestly, I wish I had read this last, but it was so good. So good. And just like, the cover is so pretty. I can't deal. It was amazing. All my like plastic wrapped library books. And then I ended the readathon this morning, which you would think that it's daytime, but it's nighttime. Reading The Troop by Nick Cutter. And I didn't know in particular what I was going into when I picked up this like story, but it actually ended up turning out pretty good. It creeped me out, but in ways that I did not expect. You definitely start to see the characters like break down, kind of lose it. You see like this like virus pretty much like pick people off. Like, you see a lot of what's going on with the parasite. The book is written in a really cool way where not only are we getting like sections of what is happening on the island, which is kind of in the past, but we also see how the parasite / experiment had developed beforehand in like a clinical sense. We also see kind of some of the like the government trials are going on surrounding this case, and it's just wild. And then thrown into all of this, one of the characters is just like off his rocker. And I'm not gonna say who, but you're gonna figure it out. And then what happens there is just so wild. But like it put like a different element to the entire like book, and it really actually works so well. So I don't think I would have liked it as much if that didn't like come up, because a lot of it is honestly really sad, because you really do see these people like start to break down, start to really delve into like this moment of like fear that puts them almost in like infancy. Like even the adults that are involved, you really see them start to like lose all hope, lose their sanity, start to do things that just aren't normal or natural. And then in the center of all of it, you have somebody who came into it and they're not like completely normal, quote unquote. So they almost like dive deeper into it and lean into what's happening. And it was so fun. I actually ended up reading it all in one go because it was the last day of the readathon today, but this was so good. I'm super, super happy. I ended up just dealing with this. I recorded a little intro at one point, which I don't know whether or not I'm going to include, but I made chai because I was going to make pumpkin bread, and New York City has been dealing with back-to-back like heat waves and like tropical storms, and I was like, there's no way I'm turning on the oven in my New York City apartment. So other than that, I had a really great reading time. Summerween was so fun. I hope that like whatever you picked up for Summerween was great. I hope that if you didn't participate in Summerween but you like kind of like horror or thriller books, you pick up some of the books that I read, specifically Ace of Spades. Please pick up Ace of Spades. It was so good. So good. I was so mad and just like blown away all at the same time. So those were really amazing. I'm gonna go film another video because I am trying to take advantage of the heat being better than usual today. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.